Welcome to Suburban Warrior, the podcast that will impact, inspire, and empower you to transform your mindset and become the badass warrior that you are. I'm your host and fellow warrior, Chrissy Pfeiffer, former clinician and corporate marketing exec turned multi-passionate entrepreneur, performance and life coach, and mom to 4 not-so-little warriors. Each week, I will bring you honest conversations with inspiring guests to share their stories of resilience, optimism, success, and simple yet effective strategies so that you transform your thoughts and change your behavior to get the results you want in your life. You will be empowered to take action, warrior up, and believe in you. Let's do this. What's up, warriors? Welcome back to another episode of Suburban Warrior. Today's guest is truly gifted, and she's going to share with us why she believes that we are all gifted as well. Of course we are, right? Michelle Young is an enlightened woman. She is a medium, a mom, a Reiki practitioner, and she channels messages from heaven. I cannot wait another second to dive into this interview. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I am so excited to have you on because, obviously we've known each other for a very long time, years, but it's really only in, I would say the last 6 months that I have been exposed to learning about your amazing gifts and what you do. And I really cannot wait for my listeners to really hear about everything that you can share with us. But first, I wanted to say, before we dive into the real content of this interview, is, we're going to get into some really amazing spiritual stuff. And no matter what religion or non-religion that you follow, the terms that we're going to use in this interview are truly interchangeable, right? I mean, whether it's God or the universe, pure source, spirit, energy, whatever it is that you choose to use for yourself, this episode is not about religion. It is truly about spirit and about energy and about something that is deeper than ourselves, and how we all can tap into that energy to deepen our human experience and really enhance our lives. So with that being said, Michelle, you are the owner of Love One Love, which is your company, and your gifts are very vast, and it's hard for, I think, someone to even explain what your gifts are. So why don't we start out by you telling us, how a little bit about your life. Like, let's start from the beginning, because I know that you've had gifts your entire life, but maybe tell us what they were like as a child, but then how you truly came to realize that this was something you really needed to tap into and explore further.
My gifts started presenting themselves. They were there my whole life, but when I was in 3rd grade, so I was about 9 years old, my mother was expecting a baby. I was the oldest child, and I had 2 younger sisters. And the day I found out that she was expecting a baby, I just knew the baby wasn't going to live. And there was a last-minute complication during the delivery, and my brother was on life support for about an hour, and my parents had to take him off life support. So he died. And that was really rattling as a young child. And then for years, a lot of similar incidents would come, and sometimes it was just like knowing about a flat tire, or knowing whether, when I met somebody, whether I could really trust them or not. Like, my radar was always on, and that's something I think is a lot of people feel all the time. But for me, as I got older, it got more and more like fun things. Like, for example, one day I was driving down the road, and it was like I saw clip art, and it was a diamond and sapphire ring. And 3 weeks later, somebody gave it to me. So there's a lot of fun things that were, messages that I received. But I guess it was about 7 years ago, and I was at a Touch a Truck event with my family, and my I was taking a picture of my husband and our two young children on a fire truck. And at that moment, I knew my mother's best friend had to come home. She was traveling and was out west, and I knew she had to come home for her son's funeral. And I immediately went from feeling like really happy. It was a first day in spring. Like it just had this, I was so happy to be there with my family. And I went from feeling, having a great time to just being really depressed because I immediately thought, what if her son, Scott, died in a fire? And Scott happens to be a fire marshal. So there's a chance of that if that's what he does for a living. And then the next day, I was mad at myself. I thought, why is this happening? I'm happy, and then I'm depleted. And the next day, my mother called me, and it wasn't her son, Scott, but her other son, Kevin, was missing. And they found his body, and he had tragically drowned in a lake by himself. And, but they didn't find him like from a Saturday night until Tuesday morning. So for 4 days, we were wondering. So my mother knew because my whole entire life I get messages. So as soon as she said, well, you have to pray, Kevin's missing, Mary's very upset. And I said, oh, I had a feeling about them yesterday. And right away, my mother said, well, what was your feeling? Because she knows my feelings are on. And I told her that Mary had to come home for a funeral, but I thought it was Scott, not Kevin.
Wow. So that's amazing that, in that moment, you were taking the picture and you got the feeling. And even though, you're so in touch with your feelings and that means something, even then, you almost didn't want to listen to it. You didn't want to hear that message at that point or listen to that intuition because you're upset. You didn't want it to shift your feelings. You didn't want it to change what was happening to you at that moment. So, and obviously that's something tragic and so hard to deal with. So, but I just think for me, sitting here listening to you tell that story, it's amazing to me how many of us have those moments that are like a blip on the screen, really, because
Exactly.
yeah, we have the thought that comes in, but because it's so like, I don't know, just out of the vibe that we're in at that moment or something so different than what we want to feel, we dismiss it. So I think it's really interesting to hear that story and, how you wanted to dismiss it, but deep down you knew that it was going to be hard to do that. So then, okay, so then take us. So from there, what was your next steps?
I remember talking on the phone with my cousin, who is obviously a lifelong friend. And and I told her exactly what I just told you. And she said, you really need to get to the bottom of this. Like you really need to explore this. This has been happening your whole entire life. Maybe now's a time to do that. And I agreed with her. But my immediate reaction was caution, because who do you even explore this with? I mean, in my past, like, what am I going to do? Go to a tarot card reader to help me explore this? Or like I've been approached by people on the street who know things about me and maybe they have these gifts, but then they tried to extort money out of me, like, in a very cynical, shady way. And so I did reach out to somebody who wasn't able to offer me anything. And then I reached out to another woman because my sister had met this medium who she had invited to her yoga studio to do channeling. And I had seen her work and I really trusted her authenticity. And I reached out to her to ask her if she knew if there was any psychics that could help me. And because I only thought I was a psychic. And she said, well, I can help you. And she taught me that I was a medium. And I mean, that took a couple of months or years for me to digest.
Or still is. Yeah.
Because it just made, and she taught me really is that I'm energy sensitive, and everybody is energy sensitive. It's why we have intuition. But she taught me that I'm energy sensitive, and she taught me how to protect myself and how to nurture it and how to develop it. And one of the things that she taught me to do was to pick up a pen and see what happened. And it's called automatic writing. And I did, and it started working for me right away. It doesn't work for everybody, but it was certainly my modality. And from there, I just started writing for hours and hours and hours a day. So I learned a lot from this woman. Her name is Lisa. And I learned a lot from my own pen. And it really taught me a lot about myself. Like you said, we really didn't want to feel those feelings. Well, that day at the Touch a Truck event where I was really happy and then depleted, I was actually questioning myself. Like, am I manic depressive? Like, what is wrong that I would be at such a high and then go to such a low? And what she taught me at that event was the message came through. Mary had to come home for a funeral, and my imagination took over. And it happens in a split second. Scott might die in a fire. I was using reasoning, trying to explain the message coming through. But once I started understanding the messages coming through, and once I actually dove into my spirituality and started exploring it more, the sad messages like that stopped, because that's spirit's way of poking you to try to get you to trust them. And once you start working with spirit a little more, those messages kind of stop, and it makes it easier. And this woman taught me tools on how to protect myself around other people so I don't take on their emotions. Because if we're energy sensitive, we're feeling spirit, we're feeling other people's emotions, we're feeling emotions from the collective. And it really empowered me to be as strong as I could be for me.
Wow, that's really interesting. So, a couple things I want to just touch base on about there. So, one, basically, what you learned is that spirit sent the message, but then almost like your human brain, your personality, or like you said, your imagination took that one message and then ran with it into another completely different direction, which I'm assuming happens probably all the time for many of us. When we get a thought in our head. And like you said, it literally takes seconds. I mean, it's so funny how many times we get a thought in our head, and in like literally 15 seconds, we just told ourselves an entire story that doesn't even exist, because it's just completely, whether it's, something about ourselves and, creating limiting beliefs, or telling ourselves a story about why we can't do something or why we're not good enough, or something about our kids or about our spouse or about our friends. I mean, we create stories in our minds all day long. So I think the fact that you just said that, like, you get a message, but then what you did with it and took it and ran with it. So I'm sure in your practice, so much of what you do is learning how to accept those messages for what they are, and learning when your human brain literally takes over.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's really cool. So, okay, for those that don't really understand, because I think there are a lot of terms out there that are used, like you said, psychic, medium, and you talked about your writing with your pen. So as a medium, tell us exactly what that means to you, and what happens. And I know for me, because I've worked with you and I've seen you write. What is that process when you talk about writing with your pen? Can you explain to listeners, like, what's happening in that process when you write?
So, well, when Lisa first told me to pick up the pen, she said, hold it ever so loosely, like as if you're not even holding it all, like just enough to give the pen some stability, and just see what happens. And my pen started writing like giant letter E's. And I knew, like, I wasn't moving the pen was just moving. And then what would happen as I just kept going with it is the pen started writing words, and the words would be as big as a piece of paper. Like if I had a 8x10 tablet, one word would be across the entire tablet, because it really I wasn't controlling it at all. And then I guess like in the first 6 weeks, what happened was different people that I had known who had passed away and, had transitioned, were coming to me, and I could feel their personalities coming through with the pen. And each person that came through, the penmanship completely changed. I could feel them laughing. I could feel their energy. And it would be one person at a time. And it would just be like 2 or 3 sentences. And then it got to a point where I just trusted it, because when you know somebody and you really feel them, like as if they were sitting right next to you, and it's hard not to trust that. So Spirit really took the time to earn my attention and my respect and my trust with this pen. And so then I started trusting the words that were coming through, and the words were lessons. And I'm not talking about, weeks, I'm talking years. Like I probably wrote for 5 years before I was telling people how long I was writing or what I was writing.
And is that because you were concerned about how to even explain that phenomenon to someone?
100%.
Yeah.
And that was like, when you think I'm a medium, it's like, geez, how do I tell my family? I remember that like for weeks, I'm like, I'm not telling my husband. He's going to think I'm crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine
I'm
that's
asking
hard.
I'm asking my own self those questions. Like, what
Right.
is this? And I knew to trust it, but I was asking myself all of those questions. Like, am I crazy? What does this mean to me? Like, how does this impact my relationships, my family, my friends, my religion? I grew up Catholic. The Catholics, my mother always taught me to believe in my gifts, but on the same time, like this is a deeper level with it.
Oh yeah, this is definitely definitely a deeper level for sure. But it's absolutely amazing, and I can imagine how difficult it was for you to, really accept that aspect of yourself and then really look into it deeper and try to learn how to strengthen your gifts and use them, to better the world, which is really what you're doing now. So, in your practice now, if you meet with someone, what is it that you are working to do with them to help them deepen their relationship with spirit or with energy?
Well, so I have to answer that question a little backwards. In my practice has developed a lot, and we just skipped over a lot. But what I feel is really important is I understand the foundation of my spiritual journey. And I want to start people at that foundation level. I want to teach people, like I have since moved on and gotten involved with spirit guided healing modalities such as Reiki, and then the body intuitive modality. I'm a body intuitive practitioner, takes that, and it's basically like a medical medium. I'm practice. So anyway, I'm able to use my gifts and be good at what I do in those modalities. However, I want to empower people, because in my journey, what I realized is that, I didn't go back and say this, but at the time when I was at that Touch a Truck event, I was a relatively, young, a new mother with young children, and relatively cut out from the working world. Prior to that, I had a real job in corporate America. I was working for an international company. I went on maternity leave, and a man was hired to take my place. I had to retain a lawyer. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I loved my job, but I found myself with a 1-year-old son, newly married, and in a situation where I was like a fish out of water. Like I had to get rid of my smartphone and get a dumb phone, because I just didn't like looking at my email and like only having it be solicitation emails from retail stores. There was nobody needing me to respond to something.
Right.
So anyway, that felt depressing to me. Nobody else in the world knew I was depressed because I looked so normal, but it was a really hard time to be a mother to a young child. Most of my friends had children that were 10 years older than my children. So I was like a fish out of water. And so that was occurring at the same time that this was going on. So this helped nurture my entire foundation. And it brought me to a place of empowerment where each day, Spirit helped me peel another layer of the onion, for myself where I empowered myself. I was able to break through limits. I was able to show up as my more authentic self. I was able to process my emotions better. And we all think we know how to process our emotions, but what I've learned about processing emotions, I want to teach people because it's not how I processed emotions before I started this journey. And as we do this, you know, our lives are meant to be easy. We're not meant to work harder and struggle. Our lives are meant to be easy. We're meant to get, you know, be paid for who we are and where our gifts are. And that's where we find peace. That's where we find happiness. And when we can operate and truly bring value and service from a place of passion and be rewarded for that and be able to live that way, that's where we're in living our best lives. And I just want to encourage and empower people and teach them what I've learned because it's just been so powerful for me. And I think it's important to learn that process.
Yeah, that's a very important part of the story. So thank you for sharing that with us, just about how you felt at that time in for your life. And I know that just from what I hear you say all the time, I'm sure spirit had something to do with all of those events occurring at the time that they did, and you know how you were feeling, you know, at that time in your life, and encouraging you maybe to look into it deeper and further. So here you are now. But to people who may not be on this spiritual journey yet, or might be on it but may not, you know, may be at that foundation like you were speaking about, what is maybe like one thing, one maybe habit or something that they can develop literally starting today or tomorrow that would be something that they could do to help maybe connect with their emotions more or deepen their spiritual journey or connect with spirit? Is there one thing that you could tell us that we could start doing that might up level us a little bit in that way?
One thing.
Yeah, I know. There's like a million. I
Can I
know.
do 5?
Yeah, sure, sure. Tell us what you think.
Okay, so we hear this over and over and over. The first thing is meditation.
Okay.
And you don't have to spend a lot of time doing meditation. 11 minutes. 11 minutes a day can get you there. Go for a walk in nature. Um, do something you love. Like if you like to run, you know, quiet your mind when you're running the entire time. Or if piano is your thing, you know, we can get into meditative states playing the piano, or gardening is another way, you know, so some people don't like to sit and meditate. But meditate and quiet your mind and get curious, like ask questions about your life before you go into that meditation. You know, what is the next step for me? You know, how can it get any better than this? What magic is here to support me? And just from asking a few simple questions like that, you might come out of your meditation with a different answer than you might have gone into it before. Because I hear so many people say, oh, I've tried meditating, it doesn't work for me. But it's a lot more than just meditating, because our whole idea is that as we change our thoughts and reprogram and let go of old story, we can always create the new story. So anybody can get from old story to new story, and meditating is a great way. But if meditating is a problem, don't get discouraged, explore more.
I love that. I love that. And I know you started off by saying, "Oh, we've all heard this, it's meditation." But you know, there's something to be said about the fact that just meditation and meditating, no matter how many times it is a day or how long it is a day, that it's out there in the conversation more and more. And you know, you hear from people, like I was just listening to a podcast with Jerry Seinfeld, who was talking about transcendental meditation and how he's been doing it for literally like, I forget, maybe the last like 25 years. He started doing it when he was 18 and in college, and literally did it every single day since then, which I think is pretty amazing. But I appreciate you giving us that tip about asking questions before going into meditation, because even some people try it or they just sit still or they walk in nature and they're like waiting for something to happen or they're waiting for something to come to them. I do think going into it with a certain intention, or like you said, asking questions, that's a great tip to further enhance that meditative experience for people?
Like, and if somebody has tried meditating and they don't feel like they've made any traction with it, they get frustrated and just walk away from it. But if we keep showing up to that same situation the same way, we're going to walk away with the same results. But if you ask a question and then you try it, it might just shift. One little word might make a difference.
Wow, that's awesome. That's great advice. Okay, so meditation. Anything else that you think someone could start doing tomorrow to help deepen that relationship with spirit? And really, when we're talking about that relationship with spirit, we're talking about listening to that inner voice. It's listening to the intuition that's there, that the little voice inside our head that we hear every day. And sometimes we just choose to hear the negative and all of the all the bad stuff it's saying to us, but we're not listening to it fully. So am I right on that? Like that's really what we're talking about, listening to our inner voice. Correct?
Yes. But you could get a notebook. This would be another suggestion, because if you are interested in developing this gift within you, I would recommend getting a notebook. And anytime you see a synchronicity or a feeling, whether if you're driving in your car and a song comes on the radio and you have those spirit chills and you kind of know that song has a message, don't just write it off. Anytime you see something and you get that feeling inside, like I call them validation chills, which you don't want to hear it every time. You don't want to just write every song you hear on the radio down. But when you hear the song, you feel a certain way and you get the validation chills, write it down. Sometimes it's if you see a number, or if you see the same number a few times, like 11:11, or every time you look at the clock, it's the same time, it's your birthday. Or if you wake up at the same time in the middle of the night, every night, write these numbers down, write how you're feeling down. Because when we start paying attention to it, these little signs that we're seeing, we're validating it, and then we're opening the door and inviting more in, and just see where it goes. Because I think you'll start nurturing your own relationship with spirit, and it will start growing and expanding.
Yeah. And you have shared, I know in our conversations, we have shared with each other situations where we have had signs, if you will, right? Signs that, had I not been really paying attention, or have you not been paying attention, things would seem like coincidences, or, oh, that's weird that happened, and you just brush it off. But, when you are more tapped into it and things happen in your life, then you realize that it really could be spirit. And, full disclosure, both of my parents are passed away, and I lost my mom, when I was 20. And so I'm always constantly looking for signs. I want to know that she's there, that she's with me, and that her and my dad are together, and that they're watching over me and my family, because they've never met my kid. I mean, my mom never met my kids. And I know that when I truly am present and focused on looking for those signs, that they're there, that I see them, and they're not coincidences. And I know you have had that experience as well. Is there any, one experience that you would like to share with listeners about, when spirit has been with you, or, that your guardian angel was watching over you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have so many.
I know.
This one story keeps coming into my mind, so I have to share this one right now. But now, and I'm sharing this, and I think it needs to be shared, because spirit, it's really important that we know that this isn't all heavy stuff. So one of the things when spirit teaches me is they make me laugh every day. Spirit humor is hilarious. Their divine intelligence is off the charts. And it's so funny and it's fun to work with them. And it's a way they want to engage with us because we can learn really big, profound, deep concepts and have fun doing it. But, part of this whole process is when I cleaned up my energy field, we're all cleaning up our diets. We're all eating organic. So anyway, my children were young and we had our favorite loaf of bread and Whole Foods stopped carrying it. I couldn't find it anywhere. It wasn't at Giant. It wasn't at Whole Foods. And this might not sound like a big deal, but when you're packing lunches and you have preschoolers, you need to have bread that they like. Otherwise, they're not eating their lunch. And
totally.
This is total mama drama, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Total mama drama. This was on my mind and I just could not find another bread. I didn't want to buy bread with high fructose corn syrup. I wanted to eat healthy. I wanted my children to eat healthy. And anything else was too dense and too hard for these little kids. And I was literally at Mom's Market one day and I'm looking around at the bread aisle and I just had a feeling I was going to find the right bread there. And I was bending down, like looking on the bottom shelves at all the bread, reading the ingredients, and a loaf of bread fell off the shelf and hit me on the head. Literally hit me on the head.
Literally hit you over the head.
And I laughed and I just said, okay, thank you, Spirit. And that was our new bread.
Oh my gosh.
I at that point, I knew this is not a coincidence. This did not jump off the shelf and hit me on the head on purpose, by accident. And
yes,
this is how fun Spirit.
I love that. Exactly. And I love that story because you said it is such a light and fun story. But that could, any one of us could have dismissed that as, oh my gosh, a loaf of bread just fell on my head and gone back to digging through the different loaves of bread. But again, when you're in tune and you know that they're really, it's not an accident, that is your bread. That's them guiding you and saying, here you go. That's yours.
And Spirit shops with you all the time. They help me decorate the house. They help me find things that I can't find. They help me, like I was bringing, a friend of mine had a tragedy and everybody brings meals and I was bringing them groceries. I wanted to bring them fresh fruits and like Spirit was literally shopping with me, helping me know what to put in the bag to bring to this family. So the more we invite it in, the more it comes, but we have to acknowledge it when a loaf of bread falls on our head. You're right. It's not an accident. It's a message.
Yes. And that's the little things in life. And like you said, it's happening all day, every day. And so I guess it's starting with those little things that
energy is all that is, right? It's all Spirit. It's the energy that keeps our whole world together. It's the energy that keeps, energy in the trees, energy in the animals. Every single thing in our environment can give us information and it reflects where we are. That can get deep really, really fast. But the more we pay attention, the more every single thing in our environment gives us cues on how to show up and be our strongest selves.
Absolutely. And also I think tapping into that, like if you are at a place in your life, maybe where you're not feeling your best or you're confused or you might be depressed or anxious about whatever it may be, to your point, it could be about having to, I don't even know if I'm using the right terminology because I'm not the expert, but clearing that energy or really tapping into something that's deeper than us or realizing what it is in us that is what we're really upset about. Or, so it sounds like going through this practice or this journey and learning more about energy and how to, use our energy and align it, I guess is the right word, in the right way, can really help us, to get out of feeling stuck or depressed. Right? Is that how would you explain it to someone who might be feeling that way and how it can help them?
The way I would explain it, and then in tandem with energy modalities, right? So none of us are experts. I've been doing this for years now, and I still work with mentors because, it's like we're all walking up the same flight of steps, right? And somebody just might be 2 steps ahead of us. So I encourage everybody to work with a mentor that can help them, either through energy modalities. I use Reiki and body intuitive. I work with a woman who channels as well, and she does body talk. But anyway, when you work with an energy modality and a mentor, what you're inviting in is these spirit guided healing modalities. And, you could go to Barnes and Noble or Amazon or any book, and read every single book on the shelf to find that one little passage that applies to you. It's like looking for a needle in the haystack. I said earlier, spirit is infinite intelligence and they're smarter than us. And when we combine our intention, our prayers, and our actions in terms of working with somebody who can fine tune it in, we're getting our own answers. Spirit cuts right to the chase, and it comes straight to what our priorities are. And that's how I recommend helping people, having people have it work to their advantage efficiently, right? Because we don't need to have this take 10 years. It doesn't have to be that long. Everything we have, our highest selves, is already there. It's just us allowing it to show through. And the way we allow it to show through is to release our resistance and let go of our old story. And that's like old emotional trauma drama that we keep buried in. So as we go through energetic sessions, and some of that can just shift, and we're nurturing our own spiritual relationships as we go, we can feel whether that practitioner that we're working with, what she says resonates with us or not, because we're developing ourselves too, and not just following somebody else. So we have to work with somebody who resonates with us, and then at the same time, be doing your own due diligence to make sure that you're following your authentic self. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh. Yes, it absolutely does. And I love, just what you said about intention, prayers, and action. Because even I think if you could just focus on those three things, setting intentions, praying for what it is you want or what your intentions are, and taking action. And just even starting there, I think those three words are a great step to move in the right direction.
I do want to say one thing though about the prayers, because
Yeah.
in my journey, and this has been one of the most important messages from Spirit, and this goes back to your other question about what's that one thing that we can do to change our lives, right?
All right. Share.
Learn how to pray in the perfect way.
Okay.
And because we can paint our lives, and we want to paint our lives from how we feel in our hearts, because prayer answers come from when we vibrationally align with who we really are and what our desires are, right? So if we can see ourselves with what we want, like, I love how I feel when my children are thriving in the perfect way, or, when my children, we don't want to say, hypothetically, say I had a child going to college and he really wanted to go to Harvard. I wouldn't say, help, please let my son get into Harvard. It would be like, I love how I feel when my son is accepted to the perfect school for him, and like listing all of his what his needs are in a school. That opens the door. It might not be Harvard. It might be a different school, but it's going to be the perfect school for him. So we have to really learn how to rework our wording with prayers. And that might sound like that's an easy thing, and it is, but we have to consciously show up for it, because this is something that I have consciously been working with Spirit with my pen and writing for over 5 years. And I learn something every day.
Absolutely. And I think that, to your point, I think it sounds like a simple thing. It sounds simple, like, oh, just rework your words. But it's not easy, because I think when then you do try to find the words, it's not always easy. And it's something that you have to be conscious of and work at, and put a little bit more maybe thought into it. So while it might be simple, like, oh yeah, just change your words, it's not always easy. Like anything else, it takes a little effort and time to really get better at it.
Because words are our language, right? So words are just how we're articulating concepts. But in actuality, when we're thinking about our words, we're actually reprogramming our thought processes. And that's where our limitations are, right? So as we reprogram that, we release the limits, because any limits we experience are all limits we place on ourselves. But this is how we've been programmed generation after generation. And it's it's, I've been doing this, but I listen to podcasts every day. I listen to the work and the channeled messages that I write every day. I listen to channeled messages that my mentor writes every day. I'm not talking like, I'll do a half hour here and a half hour there. Could be when I'm driving. It could be before I go to bed. It could be when I'm taking a bath. But it's really important to reprogram our mind, because that's how we can start opening doors that weren't open before.
I love it. Mindset is everything. Oh my gosh, Michelle, thank you so much, really, for showing up today and for your vulnerability and sharing your gifts and your story with us, because I think it's truly remarkable. I know that it has absolutely changed my life. So thank you very much for everything and for sharing and for being courageous today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I really feel that it's important to get this message out, because I really, really want people to have the opportunities that I've had, because when you never regret looking back and wish you had never done that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you want to learn more about Michelle Young and what her gifts are and her services, her website is loveonelove.com. She's also at Michelle Young on Facebook, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And so you can visit her website. And if you enjoyed this podcast today, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with friends. And of course, you can find me on Instagram at Suburban Warrior or at chrissypiper.com. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.